It has to do with the fact that, and I mean, this might just be me generalizing, but our current, the current state of Wisconsin politics is definitely pro-highway, pro-car, pro other forms of ridiculous transportation here. I mean, just, you know, propagating the idea that we should all have our own individual cars and drive back and forth 30 minutes every day to our destinations individually and use as much gas as possible. And Scott Walker obviously has not made it a key priority to take any kind of initiative and making the city a better or more friendly bike place. I will throw in, though, it's not all politicians. I have been watching the River West 24 unfold, and I've seen Nick Kovac go by several times on his bike, so there are people who are trying to make a difference and have, you know, the possibility and the resources to make a difference. As far as businesses, there's infrastructure that I see going up that's definitely bike friendly. We've got, you know, particular parking spots that used to be car parking spots, off-street car parking spots, are now exclusively for bike locks. You see that in front of Cafe Hollander. You see it in front of various other locations in the city. Definitely, people are picking it up. People are using it more, and that's why I think we're seeing some of these things happen and unfold in the last 10 years. I mean, people becoming more bike friendly. Joe?
Oh yeah, I mean the real thing that my biggest concern is, and probably is the daily path, the daily commute, the condition of the streets, the physical conditions of the streets, and the fact that like the bike lanes are something that needs to be maintained. They need to be swept, they need to be painted, shoveled. Yeah, that's a big thing that happens in wintertime. They don't get plowed. But I mean, Milwaukee's got this wonderful bike path that is really great for, you know, a Saturday ride. You ride it all around town and take your time and do it. But the problem is with the destination. I can't necessarily take the bike path to places. I can go great places like Madison or down the lakefront, but I can't use it in my daily commute. So my daily commute has to rely on the streets. And I try to pick my route through bike paths, you know, designated bike lanes, and designated bike routes, which, you know, have a different set of rules than just your normal average street. But the problem I always come into is the awareness of people. People aren't aware of what all the rules are. And that's something, you know, we take a driver's ed class when we're 16 or, you know, we're 21. We just go to the DMV and take the test and pass. It's something that isn't really touched upon in either one of those things. And, you know, especially for, you know, media outlets like television, radio, PSAs, you know, I hear all these wonderful ones about like community gardens and music programs and stuff like that, but you never hear anything about like bicycle awareness. You know, one of the things I always try to tell people, it's your, you know, brother-in-law, it's your sister, it's your cousin, it's your niece. It's people. We're just trying to go to back and forth to work. You know,
But yeah, I also think that there's probably, you know, fairly specific reasons why, you know, those types of messaging and stories don't get out there more broadly. Which, I mean, you know, going more directly with John's question, I mean, I think, you know, even like something as simple as the permits that would make sort of this, you know, it's already fairly prominent, it's fairly sort of central to, you know, a lot of people's, you know, cultural life of Milwaukee, at least for this period of time. Which suggests that perhaps, well, even while there's indications of how people and sort of groups are becoming more in terms of accepting open for it, I think a lot of cases, political institutions and businesses aren't. I mean, or except with certain sort of honorable exceptions. I think particularly the local ones that are more sort of closely involved. And I don't know. I guess I wonder. I mean, it could be overly conspiratorial, but if probably some of the things that got identified as being promoted by a strong bicycling culture and bicycling community, for instance, you know, actually seeing and talking with other people in the path of your route, of actually being more aware of the area, of being involved and organizing, directing events like River West 24, are things that, you know, again, but with perhaps certain honorable exceptions, but that most of, you know, local and, you know, less local political leaders and economic institutions and businesses don't particularly have an enthusiasm about encouraging, or at least would rather, you know, invest and draw out much more in terms of, you know, travel fast, travel alone type setup that runs through automobile.
Absolutely. The transportation revolution definitely is going to happen as a grassroots movement. And politicians are going to start taking this movement seriously when more things like the River West 24 start popping up, when more people are out there biking. I see more and more people commuting every year, not just in summer, but in winter too. And hopefully we'll, in some point in the future be able to be on par with the Amsterdams of the world or the Copenhagens of the world, where they have individual raised bike lanes that are away from parked cars opening their doors and parked cars driving. I mean, it is that much safer, and I think that's why people use it more. It is just the simple fact that biking can be quite dangerous. You have people, definitely a hostility from automobile traffic, where they feel very privileged to the entire road, and they can't understand why you're on the road at all, although the laws of Wisconsin state that as a bicyclist you have, definitely the right of the road, and you should be, and the responsibility of it, and you should be following those same rules. And granted, every day I see, irresponsible bikers just as much as I see irresponsible drivers, but I think we need to all come together as a community and understand that we're just, people who are biking are just people trying to get to another spot, A to B, just like the driver is, and we need to be a little bit more cautious of, each other, I'm not just saying, drivers and automobiles are at fault here, but we really all need to be a little bit more cautious of each other, and I think that the more and more we have these grassroots movements, the more infrastructure that we put into Milwaukee, and the more people we get riding, it's going to click with people. And I want to, put out there, I'm not anti-car. Clearly in Wisconsin, if you're going anywhere, if you're going up north to go camping, if you want to go to a great lake like Lake Winnebago or whatever and go fishing or whatever you need to do, we don't have any other real great forms of transportation to get us there besides the car. You're not going to take a, Badger bus or a Greyhound bus to your camping destination. It's just not going to work. So you do need, car travel. It's not the issue. It's just making it more balanced between the two forms of transportation at this point.
I think politically, though, age is coming a lot into it too, because there's a lot of younger, more, aware. Maybe they're conscious, environmentally conscious. The way they're brought up, just the age generations are different in politics, and for maybe a new department to be opened up, that's only going to cost more money and time and taxes. And we know how people like to spend other people's money. But I really think generation-wise, I think more people are exposed to it. I mean, Nick Kovac rolling by, he's a nice guy. He's younger. He's probably got a little bit more progressive thoughts. Sorry.
Yeah, and I think that, and also, with the age, there's another issue I think that has to be remedied. Since I think it's not just a matter of younger people becoming, sort of more ecologically conscious that can simply inevitably turn up for that. I mean, there's some aspects of that might be able to be motivated, but also, aspects of cars, not just as a form of transport, but as forms of identity, have always appealed, and still to a large extent appeal in some ways to the youth more than anyone else. I mean, Monica mentioned before that the issue with bikes not looking as sexy or as appealing. I think that's becomes the subtext of it that.
Which personally for me, they're a whole hell of a lot more sexy. But but they're not in terms of marketing. They're not put out there in commercials or.
And if we're talking that in the emergence in the early 20th century of at the same time of youth and in terms of youthful sexuality and new forms of masculinity, and it was heavily bound up with car as ability to, in terms of something to have sex in, something to travel to other areas to show power, authenticity, and among other things, it's always, I think, it's a useful counterpoint to the kind of sort of general cliches that run through of women as being sort of vain and flighty and concerned with clothes and shopping of it, whereas men aren't vain or obsessed about it going for cars. I mean, it gets run through differently, but I think both that's tricky because it becomes a sort of intimate thing that people have a lot of own personal psychology and perceived virility and et cetera bound up with it, but also because those those associations don't come about just accidentally. They're the result of significant cultural pressures and advertising and promotion that, I don't know, I mean, yeah, I think in some ways if it is enough of the shift in perception that would make, as part of your youthful identity, become involved with bicycling culture and with larger community, as opposed to individual, in terms of, how in terms of how fast can this piece of metal get in the road. See another sort of charming noises that's not caused by bicycle as run through.
I might have saw it on the cam actually.
See, that's further proof that the bicycles that have been going past, of course, over the past half hour have not made the same sort of disturbance. So among other things, avoiding noise pollution, allowing the clear and consistent hearing of our soothing voices that have come to expect from River West Radio and the Sides of Thoughts. But beyond that. Yeah, I mean, so one other thing is, shouldn't therefore underestimate the, sort of challenge or how difficult it would be to shift the way the majority of the population views this to a sort of more sane and sustainable model, but also that we shouldn't sort of underestimate what can be accomplished if doing that. In some ways, I have my sort of own degree of, skepticism towards a lot of business and political forces, which partly means that I think it's less surprised that there's, groups that are just sort of slow to, shift, or that even sympathetic, individuals like a Nick Kovacs of it, hasn't, so far as can tell, produced, vast amount of direct impact or changed local governance that substantially. And so that means that perhaps, that shouldn't underestimate how how radical a, this sort of shift in transport or involved consciousness is to have a large group of people viewing biking as the prominent necessity. And in that case, it might mean that would have to, take a sort of more, oppositional or independent, or sort of just, working outside major business and political and economic centers and building own kind of connections, which
definitely,
which among other things seems to be partly what River West 24 has done. That it's a way that it's involving at this point a pretty large group of people directly, and is impacting a fair degree of the larger sort of neighborhood.
And that's fair. I understand that the aldermen of the city of Milwaukee have other pressing issues that they have to, take into consideration, as well as transportation in the city. They have other constituents who have their own problems, and that's exactly where you're right. And talking about, we need to have more people getting involved just at the grassroots level. That's going to turn the tide, I think, and that will get more politicians really on board with, what needs to be changed here. I mean, when it really comes down to it, it's pretty much an issue of finance. We're not going to get any politicians to move on it unless there's a critical mass of people saying they want this. And at this point in time, you have about, I think for Milwaukee, it's about 1% of the population that is commuting every year. I think that is am I right on that number?
Oh,
it's not very high.
It seems kind of high, even in that sense. It seems kind of high.
Yeah, so it's really a small, minority of people, but again, you have to start small, and you can make great changes that way. Either way, I'm not, for me, I'm never going to stop biking. It was 10 years ago, like I said, when I came to Milwaukee and was an undergrad at UWM, taking the 22 from River West to UWM just became ridiculous to me. The bus was always late, it was packed, and it was free because I had, the student bus pass. But in the summertime, it wasn't. I had to pay, and back then it was probably like 75 cents or something. Now it's $2.50 to take the bus. So for me, it was ridiculous to think that a bike trip from, Center in Bremen over to UWM on the 22 took 35 minutes. On my bike, it took 5 minutes. Why was I wasting all this time standing out by the bus stop in, my Chuck Taylors in the middle of winter and freezing my bleep off, it made no sense to me. So back then when I started biking, I took my lumps. I had a few people door me. I've, had to flip over my bars and narrowly miss buses, and, you will encounter things on a bike that they're not going to be comfortable. You might fall off, you might hurt yourself. Get a helmet, get pads, you know, just, you have to be a very defensive driver like you do as a you know, automobile driver as well. But I think that you could really, you know, for me, like I said, I'm not stopping because there's something surrounding it. When you start and you do it every day, it becomes like your morning cup of coffee. There is no other way of transportation, especially in the urban areas. And, you know, a lot of urban centers really weren't even built for car travel, and it shows. We've got narrow streets. You can't park on them in the winter when the snow's too high. I would say we should, you know, have more infrastructure for bikes and mass transportation and get the cars out of the city. But that's just my utopian world that will never happen, unfortunately.
Tear up all the roads and put in grass.
Oh, I was trying to get him in here.
Yeah, it's a comes a run through.
Damn.
Through it. Yeah, so, but yeah, I mean, Utopian becomes an interesting setup on this, since on the one hand are talking about, you know, simply, you know, move away from, you know, the, you know, just as I said, I mean, car culture said that in the mode, car is the primary means of transit, which seems sort of, you know, natural and inevitable at this point, but is a fairly recent run through, both technologically and sociologically, and just as a way of organizing population. That's, you know, in some cases, you know, still the impact of how society has been transformed with that, and then we know that, you know, this will not be here indefinitely. But at the same time, it does become ingrained enough to a lot of, you know, sort of like daily experience. It's either something that people, which are like, think and assess, you know, a great deal about in terms of like which specific car, which in terms of, you know, car commercial influences them the most, etc. Or in some cases, perhaps even worse. I mean, they don't think about it like practically at all, but it's just so much there. It becomes as much of a constant as, you know, the, you know, water they drink, the food they eat, and then it's hard, therefore, to, you know, challenge or raise awareness as in comparative issues itself, and sort of, I think, then to make people check and consider and scrutinize, you know, well, the water they drink of it, the specific type of food they eat, how it's sort of made, produced, and I don't know. So that, yeah, I guess the utopian becomes, you know, even while it's the sort of, in some cases, you know, in that abstract manner, was the path of least resistance, or the thing that would make, you know, most sense with a kind of community. I mean, depending, of course, how far you're traveling, how much you need to, but. You know, granted, many people that do live in enough sort of proximity or potentially could, that basically, you know, in at least in sort of urban areas, is not impossible, and it wouldn't, on the whole, I mean, take that much in the way of, you know, resources or energy or shifts of it to make, you know, it much, you know, much less likely to be, you know, killed in the process of biking in for a given day. But yeah, but still, the utopian does also recognize just that it's, you know, it still is, you know, very much a minority view globally, and perhaps even more so within the United States specifically, and that it, you know, involves either a in terms of long, drawn-out, difficult struggle, or, you know, a short, traumatic, revolutionary one. But I'm not inherently.
Blow up all the cars.
Yeah.
I'm not going that far.
I'm not inherently envisioning that as, you know, actually, you know, practical or desirable. Oh. Okay, but let's see, and for. Yeah, so it becomes the involved run-through. And for those of you just now joining us on the air, or have recently, this is the Size of Thoughts Conversations with the Alliance of History graduate students. I'm producer Jacob Glicklick. Normally do some show on Tuesday evenings. We're 7 to 8. We're on River West Radio. We're talk about the process of different aspects of history, culture, politics, and sort of pessimistic assessment of where we are now, but you know, we're as, you know, thinkers and sort of activists and, you know, political agents from one side or another can go further. So yeah, we're doing our sort of special time coverage from noon to 2 p.m. as part of the River West 24. To this point, you've been joined by sort of the host of this, Monica Drake. Hey.
Hi.
And just joining us now, actually, on the air is another guest,
Yeah, Nick Kovac.
Yes, who we've been talking, actually talking to some previously in sort of the context of some of the larger politics of both River West 24 and more broadly what this what Milwaukee is has for bicyclists. That there's a strong bicycling culture. That there's the degree of infrastructure that make people that are so interested in doing sort of more community and ecologically friendly folks to do through. But at the same time, in practice, biking through Milwaukee, has a reasonable chance of being killed. Not infrequently.
Well, what's your definition of reasonable? I think you're probably more likely to get killed driving than biking. I don't have the stats in front of me, but I would be shocked if that wasn't the case by an order of magnitude.
Yeah, but I guess at the same point that just because of some of the greater just fragility as well, people have the things that both in terms of infrastructure of roads and sort of plans and attitude of drivers towards cyclists that seems to make it in terms of a more confrontational.
There's no question that on a cultural level, on a interaction level, pedestrians, bikes, cars, buses, there's definitely a tension there. But I would argue very strongly that the idea that bicycling is not safe is complete perception and has nothing to do with reality. I would argue that very strongly. But everyone thinks that. And not everyone, but too many people think that. And by thinking that, that thought makes it less safe than it ought to be, and it keeps a lot of people off their bike. The safest thing for bicyclists is not a helmet. Obviously, you can't wear a seatbelt on a bike. Seatbelts do make you safer in a car. Helmets don't make you safer on a bike. And one thing that helmets do is they keep other bicyclists off the street. The one thing that makes bicyclists safe, other than being aware and being smart, is more bicyclists. Because if cars are used to seeing bikes, they will adjust. Cars are used to seeing other cars. They're used to seeing people cross streets at crosswalks. Any behavior, if you're not in a car or you're not a pedestrian in a crosswalk, cars don't know what to do. On the other hand, if they're used to being surrounded by bikes, I shouldn't say surrounded, but if they're used to bikes being in mixed traffic with them, car drivers will adjust. And the other point I would make on this is, unlike a lot of special interest groups or other kinds of political human community tensions we have, where it's this group against that group, be it gender, be it racial, be it class. Generally, whatever gender, race, or class you're in tends to roughly stay the same. But all of us in the same day, sometimes in the same hour, drive cars, ride bikes, ride buses, and walk. Depending on the time of day and what you're doing, you are switching your allegiance in terms of which special interest you're in. And so the tension shouldn't be there. And it is, I think, right now because there's an imbalance, because there's not enough bicyclists. Not so much in River West, but I think citywide it's growing. But I think that's the main thing, is to get over that perception that it's not safe. It is safe. It could be safer, and it would be safer if more of us did it. But it is safe now to bicycle, even when there's not a lane.
Could I ask, so you're very involved in the Bike to Work Week, and you clearly are a commuter, and you're involved in the River West 24. So I guess, and thank you for coming in and talking.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm here next door. My dad and I are doing a practice lap, and so we're just stopping to get a sandwich at Fuel. So it's good time.
Yeah, you need to fuel up.
Yeah.
Wah, wah. Anyway, I was wondering what created the care to go and do that for the community, or what personally makes you want to get out there and commute more, and roughly your experience of bicycling in Milwaukee.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, the fact that I commute and I'm often in a suit from River West to City Hall, it has become a political statement, but that's not at all why I'm doing it. And I was a bicycle commuter long before I was an alderman or an aldermanic candidate. Both in Milwaukee and when I lived in New York for several years, I used to bike from Prospect Heights, Brooklyn to Maspeth, Queens every day, which was a 7-mile each-way commute. And really, on an average day, I probably did 20-25 miles because I was a newspaper editor, so I covered different events in the community, almost always by bike, almost always.
Gotta use the messengers.
Yeah, and to be honest, Maspeth, Queens, the subway didn't go there. I did have a car for a lot of the time I lived in New York, but with traffic, it was 35 minutes by car and it was 35 minutes by bike to do the 7 miles.
Yeah, I recently saw a documentary on the River West 24, the first year it was screened last Sunday at the public house as part of night school, which I noticed was among the people there that were joining, and so have been also just have you been consistently involved or?
Well, right. And my point is, there are, and you saw me reading the proclamation then, and so it is. Like I say, I'm not shying away from the political statement it makes that it is good for your health, it is good for the community's health and the planet's health to do this. But honestly, the reason I bike is because it's more fun. And I don't even know if I would say fun. It's actually more convenient also. Like I said, I learned that when I lived in New York and I had the 35-mile commute each way. 35-minute commute driving or biking. Well, if it's the same amount of time, it's a real no-brainer. And in Milwaukee, I would say it's about the same. If I want to get to work by bus, it's 20 minutes. If I want to drive, actually, since I have a parking spot, I can do it in about 6 or 7. But if I didn't have a parking spot, the 10 minutes it takes me to get there on bike would be faster. When you factor in parking downtown, it's actually faster to bike. And certainly getting to Bayview, you can get to Bayview pretty quickly. You can get anywhere in the urban core of this city as quickly and as conveniently by bike.
In about 20 minutes.
Yeah, in about 20 minutes. I mean, you can get to the west side in 20 minutes. Actually, I know exactly how long it takes me to get to 57th and Valete, and it's like 22 minutes that's if I'm really moving. It's 30 minutes to do it comfortably without sweating. But because I go watch Packer games there at my buddy's house, and I have to get there by kickoff, so I know exactly when I need to leave by, So it really is just a... Again, it's not, I'm saying it now publicly, but, the reason I bike there is you see the city in a different way, you feel better about yourself, it just puts you in a better frame of mind, a better mood, and you've seen more on your way, and it's not any slower.
Those pockets of Milwaukee that can seem quite isolated from one another really open up once you start biking.
You realize how these lines in our head, these social, economic, racial lines in the city, how close things really are. And when you drive, especially when you drive on the freeway, you get this sense of the freeway divides us and things. It's weird how they seem farther apart by car. The bike actually makes the city feel smaller.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, you bypass everything. You're not seeing the change in the type of housing or, the effect that, the post-World War II mass housing development has as you go further and further out into the suburbs. If you start in the middle of the city and you expand out, you can build up Milwaukee's entire timeline. You can hear birds, you can smell things. I was saying the other day that if I took my regular commuting route and you blindfolded me, I would know where I was by what I'm smelling, what I'm hearing, and if I had, clairvoyance, the lights I have to stop at.
And the thing in some part there are political implications of that, or at least ways that in terms of that scene or interacting and moving through the boundaries of in terms of different segments of Milwaukee or the different Milwaukees. In some ways, it becomes useful when it's not done in a isolated metal box with music playing of it, where there's every reason not to be noticing other or interacting with other people who are. It's a little higher level of just annoyance and of irritants as they're trying to get past and move them. So I don't know. I guess it's not. Most means it becomes simply it's a form of transit. It doesn't necessarily make you more empathetic or involved person. It does.
I think it does. Well, I think it does for me.
Well, perhaps.
I think I'm a better person when I'm bicycling. I really do. I think that I think that bicycling made my relationship to my physical environment and the people I live near or not so near to. I think it made me improve my relationships with that. I really do. I agree that it's not a cure-all, it's not a silver bullet, but I think it's like eating a healthy diet. It helps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are definitely instances, and I know you want to go and get sandwiches, so
Well, how's it with our schedule, Dad, on the sandwiches? They're making them? Oh, you didn't eat? Oh, for a sandwich? Okay, so we got. So I guess I have no schedule other than we got to pick another place to eat a sandwich.
Okay. But what I was going to say is, I think it really does make me a more empathetic person because in a car you're isolated. You are going from point A to point B, and that's it. When you're on a bike, people want to wave at you because you aren't surrounded by 3,000 pounds of steel in your music playing. So I do have people I don't even know waving at me, and I pull over, and I might talk to them, or I might even go and get coffee at a different place that I've never been to before because it's on a route that I'm taking, and say, I'm going to try this new place. Typically, I feel like people in cars are only going the same places they always go. Like, I'm now getting in my car and going 3 blocks to Pick and Save,
And biking has made me more adventurous in my car. When I'm in my car, I don't take the freeway anymore, and I like to take different routes. Mm-hmm. And also, I noticed this before I cycled a lot when I drove, I would get impatient with cyclists. So I can relate to why cars don't like cyclists, because you just feel like, oh, they're in my way, traffic's bad enough, I got to worry about pedestrians. It's one more thing to worry about. But if you bicycle enough, then you realize that's me. The empathy increases.
Absolutely, yeah.
It could be me on another day, in another hour, that's me, so I'm going to try to not run that person over. I'm going to make that a priority as part of my driving around.
Yeah, so I mean, it seems that is a mode of, seeing and relating to other people and connecting of it and changing variants and has implications. The other thing that we were talking about earlier was just, environmental standpoint of it, that, to put bluntly, bicycling is something that could still potentially be doing in 60, 70 years. Car driving isn't, at least not necessarily sort of this current form, and not without sort of major
And do you know the history of the bicycle and the craze it created in the 1890s? I mean, when the bicycle, it was a craze. It was, people were like, this is amazing. I can suddenly go 10 times as far as I used to be able to go in the same amount of time.
And the only thing that really cut that off was the Model T. I mean, we had, the gay 90s, and people were biking around on their wood frame bikes and, having penny farthings and whatnot. And then the invention and the, mass production of the Model T, making it affordable for people to start buying, really kind of cut that whole bike revolution off. I think we're really seeing it again now, and that's what I was talking about before, is that the more we get people, involved in it, I think the more innovation we're going to see in bicycling and infrastructure. It's just going to make people want to get out there and really do it.
And because, asking both the sort of bike owners, does it have a sense of, do you sort of relate to that as a different type of possession than others of it, or?
Compared to what kind of possession?
In terms of both with cars or other types of things of about equivalent price that needs to sort of do and maintain. In terms.
It's cheaper.
Yeah.
It's a lot cheaper than driving.
Right, but
I will say this: we're talking about how great bicycling is. The one disadvantage is when it rains or when it's really hot. It does make it hard to be presentable when you show up somewhere.
Wind also is terrible.
Yeah. but even with that, it seems that the commute could have a positive implication.
Of course, if everybody biked, then everybody'd be wet, so it wouldn't matter.
Right. Everyone would come to work. They'd kind of smell bad. Whatever.
And it does become more involved with the natural environment. For better and worse as they run through. That it's less easy to block out. So it's more aware of other parts of the city. I guess also that's just questions for possession of it, since how much the process of in terms of repair or upkeep, you feel that involves you with other parts of the community that are bad for, or is it sort of just something that's just necessary for?
Without sounding sappy, I just want to throw in really quick, I don't find my bike as a possession, but more of an extension of myself. And to go a little bit deeper into the psychology of Monica, it actually makes me feel kind of bionic. So, in that respect, people really care about and can become very attached to their bikes. I know I am. I've had my current bike for 5 years, and I'd be distraught if something were to happen to it. So, yeah, that's my take on having a bike.
I am generally a sentimental person, and there's certain bikes I've ridden lots of places that I would not want to lose for sentimental reasons, the same reason I wouldn't want to lose other keepsakes. But I don't feel that way at all. To me, it is absolutely a physical object. It's a tool, it's a possession, and it's a very handy, valuable one. But I actually own 3 different bikes. None of them are expensive, and so I wouldn't want them to be stolen. But if they were, I would just get on another bike.
See where I'm I'm a cowboy. It's my horse kind of mentality.
Well, at this point, Eitan and the guys over at Truly Spoken have replaced so many parts. I'm not even sure it's the same bike anymore. I take it in there all the time for the fixes.
Very cool.
Do you want to weigh in as us? No. Well, can I tell one story about your bike? I'm going to tell a story about my father, Peter Kovac, who's in here and he's hungry, so we should probably go get a sandwich somewhere else. But you hadn't biked in 30 years? It'd been 20 years, but I got one of his old bikes, the bike that he used to keep me in the back seat when I was a baby, and I got it tuned up at Truly Spoken. And he came 2 years ago to ride the race, and just by ridden an inch in 20 years and decided to do 40 miles on the spot.
Oh, wow.
Just not decided. It just happened because the River West 20. I mean, bicycling itself is addictive, but I think this particular bike race, the River West 24, you know, I say it's like a potato chip that you can't. I dare you to eat just one. You know, I dare you to do just one lap. And then last year, the 40 miles, that was guerrilla style. He wasn't an official entrant. Last year he was, and he hit his goal of 100 miles, which I think is still the only 2 times he's biked in the last 2 years.
Congratulations, that's awesome. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I agree. It's very addicting. I was talking about before, you know, once I started, I got off, you know, really taking the bus so much because it's become so much more expensive over the years. And truly biking the majority of the time, you know, all year round. And it's like my morning cup of coffee. I can't, you know, get started unless I have that experience in the morning.
Has it replaced your coffee, or do you still need coffee?
No, I still need coffee. Nope, I still need coffee.
Me too. So that's my goal, though, that someday I'll just feel sober.
Switch to tea. Step off from there.
But I do agree, it does make you feel like your day started. I mean, there's times when in the car, it's almost like you're still in this domesticated environment. From your house to your car to your office, and you might never really feel human. I don't know if human's the word. You might never feel like the animal that you are. You lose touch with your body.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, I love your show. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I hope you guys find a sandwich shop that is, you know, 15 minutes or less.
All right. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
And thanks to all continuing listeners. As now enter second hour. It's going to be sort of 2-hour special coverage, Sides of Thoughts. At this time, you know, provide a update on the current progress of the race. The overall leader of this, I see the 270 teams that are still going strong in River West 24, is the Poisonous Scorpion Razorblades. 57 laps, still in the lead. Now at second place, that's with A team. From B team, Bangarang is going second, and then tied for third is between the Crushing Crew and the Milwaukee Bike Polo. 52 laps, 30 bonus points.
That's pretty impressive for the solo rider compared to the team rider, the amount of laps. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, or actually, that was B and A team. Although the most solo rider I see is still Trevor Tin, 46 laps.
Excellent.
Which is, yeah.
You go, Trevor. Keep up the good work. No sleep till Sunday.
It's when you guys were talking about the bus, and so I don't really want to bash on the bus too much, but like, because it is good for people to get out there, and I know not everybody has, you know, the ability to ride, like, you know, medical conditions and stuff like that. But I always, whenever it's really terrible and miserable out, I'm always riding my bike and looking at the people waiting for the bus and going, oh man, those poor people, they got to stand out in the rain. You know, like, it just looks so terrible. But, you know, conversely, I'm still riding my bicycle through and thinking, like, it's no big deal. You know, I got a coat for it. I got my nice wool socks. You know, you can prepare for the environment a little more efficiently.
You do prepare for it. Once you start biking more, you realize the things that are necessary to go out into it. And I think, like I was talking about before, I kind of did give up on the bus because I would go out in the most ridiculous outfits for, you know, December, January, February, in Chuck Taylors and like a completely thin coat. And then once you start getting out there more, you know, you're not just going from point A to point B on a heated bus. You realize that winters aren't so bad if you prepare for them. And I think that I'm outside a lot more because I know I can, and I know I can prepare for it. I know I can go out there and bike in the snow. You know, I'm getting out and doing more winter-related activities because I can handle it better. Just, you know, cross-country skiing or just anything. You know, anything that is winter-related is not as bad as it used to be for me. And I think biking has a lot to do with that, the year-round biking that I'm committed to.
So I guess, yeah, another thing that had talked somewhat yesterday about some of the other problematic aspects of biking, or at least some limitations that even with what dominated. You know, I guess your agreement is you know, better, you know, sort of alternative. So I guess some issues, involving like the manufacturer and sale of bikes, like, you know, in terms of the made in China still type of fact, or the fact that sometimes, you know, what makes it, you know, sort of cheaper or, you know, more convenient is things of it that are not necessarily humane labor standards.
There's definitely that's something I take into consideration a great deal, and just my daily life, as well as like the kind of the equipment I want to buy. I mean, personally, I try to always strike a balance between, you know, something that's going to be well made within my economy, like what I can afford, and something that's not so gimmicky that it's just the newest thing, but something that's, you know, quality parts, something that has a good reputation behind it. But unfortunately, there's not a lot of American manufacturers that I can fit into my budget. I mean, a lot of the manufacturers that do wonderful work, I mean, one of my best friends in the world, he's a custom frame builder, and he does just beautiful things. It's a shameless plug, but it's Capricorn Bicycles, so if anybody wants to check him out on the internet, his name's Brad Wilson. He's a very cool dude.
Beautiful bikes.
Beautiful bikes. But I mean, the great resources and time it takes him to make these things, it is also kind of how he supports, you know, him and his wife and his lifestyle. Well, I shouldn't say wife, but, you know, girlfriend, close enough. But the ability to go down to, like, you know, a local bike shop and spend like $500 on a bike that was made overseas and doesn't necessarily have the right quality I'm looking for, the right kind of materials, is a little bit more of a balance, though. It's like I'm going to have to compromise maybe, you know, fine craftsmanship for sturdy built materials that I know will last. I mean, I ride this bike I've gotten when George Bush gave us the tax incentive to like get everybody back and spending money again. I went out and I bought a bicycle with it, which probably
Wow, thank you, George Bush.
yeah,
Weird.
which is probably the only thing that guy ever did for me. But like I always kind of joke about it. I went and bought a Kona, which is it's a made in Taiwan bike. It was a company that was started in the United States, and they make some very nice high-end stuff. And they make some pretty okay low-end stuff. But I went shot down the middle and got a good deal, and that bike's been underneath me for all those years, and I ride it every single day, and I put very little maintenance into it. I mean, spray the chain down once in a while, wipe off the dirt, and replace the brake pads and tubes and things like that. So for a $500 bike that I maybe have to put in $75 to $100 worth of parts a year, I can still get around that. I mean, at the very most, I make sure that I get the most out of all the equipment I use. But
and definitely don't underestimate used bikes. When you get it used, it's not all that bad of a bike, and you're supporting a local business that's selling it to you. So even if it's a bike that was originally made, in Taiwan,
or in the 70s, this is steel.
Right.
They make buildings out of this material.
Right.
It'll be okay.
It will
the paint will be
last.
chipped up, and
And then there are other things. You're definitely, you're going to have to get chains that probably aren't produced here. But you can, if you take care of one, you can have it for maybe a year or so if you're lubing it and keeping it clean. Tires, that's kind of a tricky one. It depends on how much glass you're going to find on Milwaukee streets, and sometimes it's impossible to avoid on Water Street on a Saturday morning.
Yeah,
as we all know.
By Monday, it's pretty sparkly downtown. Especially if the Brewers are doing good or the Packers,
And most of it ends up right in the bike path for some reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, and unfortunately the issue degree of trade-off between those trying to be ethical consumers and supporting products that are ultimately sort of supporting the sort of local business and local laborers, and also just not less exploited working conditions, but not always something that can do based on the sort of budget, unfortunately. Though I guess maybe interested in hearing a bit more from both of you, whether in terms of just like how set about making those decisions, or sort of like weighing that dilemma in context of bicycle purchase and bicycle maintenance, in contrast with maybe other sort of routine purchases, which in many cases also, unfortunately, involve or can involve far even less ethical types of economic purchases, and just partly because it seems that Monica at least view the bicycle ownership of it as a somewhat different way. Does that also factor in with kind of like the whole process of considering, like in terms of in between things of like noticing need a sort of new chain, or in terms of or a new bike overall, to actually owning that, does that run through of it feel like a different kind of personal economic consideration?
I don't know if I think of it that way. I'm certainly not saying I fetishize my bike or anything, but you're very in tune with it. I will say that. I mean, I understand it's an inanimate object, but I feel very in tune with it. I know when it needs a new chain or it needs lube. In fact, I have a term for it. I call it when it sounds like a Volkswagen. And it has that like weird grinding sound, and that's when you need to, you know, start changing out your chain or lubing it up or cleaning it off. You know, also you get really, you know, less for us. I don't know if it's aesthetic reasons or just upkeep, but you know, you get really into taking it apart and painting it and making sure it's, you know, it's properly painted. Just, you know, the paint kind of is a barrier for what's underneath, so you're not like, you know, you're avoiding corrosion and things that could happen like that. You're looking at, you know, your tires and your tubes. You know, you can tell when your tires are worn, especially if you're biking on a rainy day, which you don't want to happen. So you're always looking at, you know, what are the treads on my tires? Are they still pretty good, or do I need to change that out? And some of it's simple safety issues like that. You know, to keep yourself safe, you want to make sure that your brakes are working and that your treads are, you know, pretty good, looking pretty good, not too bald. And then some of it is just simple, you know, it's fun. It's fun to kind of, you know, do new things to your bike or paint it or paint little pictures on it. I mean, again, it's, you know, part of my personal conception or my personal relationship that seems a little bit more than obviously maybe Joe's or Nick Kovac's, but my like kind of my personal relationship with my bike is that I like to, you know, it's my horse. I like to make sure that it's, you know, well fed and it looks nice. And
well, I agree more so with your, you know, sentimental attachments to. I mean, I have bicycles too that I had for, you know, years and years. When I was 16, mountain biking was kind of coming into fashion. And I went out and I bought a very good mountain bike that I still have, and I rode that thing, you know, every day, all the time. And I had friends in that we would take our bikes places. And, you know, one of the first things my parents were really kind of, you know, dismayed. They're like, oh, why did you go and spend all this money? You're 16, you're just going to drive your car around all the time. And that wasn't the case. You know, I enjoyed biking, and both my friends still do. I mean, the guys I grew up riding bikes with still ride bikes every day, and they're still really into it. And it's just something that we've held on to. And I think it's mostly because we're so attached to our bicycles, because there's so much of our so much of our identity is expressed in those things.
Yeah.
I mean, down to, you know, I have streamers on my bike because it's all about visibility and fun and a little bit of whimsy. And I think maybe if I approach it with a little more positive attitude, if I'm biking out there, and, you know, people are less apt to like run a guy over with a handlebar mustache and a big smile on his face and crazy streamers.
Yeah, it's taking me a way of, you know, self-presenting.
At least that's the theory anyway.
Run through. Although, yeah, they're asking questions of you. Although I guess, you know, should confess at this time that not myself, active bicyclist, that I own it, not used really last year, unfortunately. But, well, admittedly, after for the River West 24 event and all, you know, this sort of analysis, and, you know, and considering, you know, shifting to be more involved with that, since there's, you know, clearly a number of useful things to be said about it. Anyway, for those of us, those just joining us on the air, this is the Size of Thoughts conversations with Alliance of History graduate students in part of a special coverage that normally we do Tuesday 7 to 8 p.m. Today we're doing from noon to 2 p.m. expanded coverage as part of River West Radio's Around the Clock analysis, commentary, and interviews and run-through of it with members of the River West 24. So then we're joined by a new...
Hi, my name's Chris. How you doing?
Hey, Chris.
Hey, buddy.
Yeah.
Hey, buddy.
So did you come from the We've been...
I was volunteering for 24 hours, but I still got some hours to go.
Excellent. Yeah, maybe, you know, describe... Yeah, we've been, you know, talking, you know, a number of other terms about, you know, both the River West 24 as a community, as a race, some of the implications of bicycling, kind of transit, and, you know, in alternatives, other things. So yeah, maybe in terms of, you know, bringing that you know, to more tangible run through.
Like my experience.
Yeah, if you could describe anything.
I'm tired, buddy.
Oh,
I'm really tired.
Yeah, that's. Yeah, I think that's.
I've been up for a really long time, and I'm really tired right now.
Yeah, well, but yeah, and I know that.
Sorry, ladies, that's my sexy, raspy voice. I wake up with this in the morning. Yes.
I don't think I have anything to apologize for. But yeah, so is this the first time you volunteered this year?
No, I've been volunteering for the last couple years, and it's always been a pleasure.
Pretty good.
I love cooking dinner. I love feeding people. Everybody seems happy. cook breakfast at 5 in the morning, feed people at 7.
Nice.
Wonderful. Wash dishes. I love it. Yeah, it's the best. It's better than the job I have right now.
Nice. And what made you first get involved with River West 24 volunteering the first time you did? You know, what drew you into?
Well, you know, I didn't have a spot on the race, and I said, well, if I can't race, I'm just going to do laps on my own. And Wendy was like, you should volunteer. What's better than racing for 24 hours straight? Volunteering for 24 hours straight. And I was like, straight. I was ready, and then I did it, and I was happy. I loved it, and I got my caution flags, and I'm good to go.
Good. Yeah, this is the largest the race has been, correct, this year?
500 people, but I think it ended up with like 700.
Yeah, I'd heard that they had capped the number of tickets of it for after like at 750 or 780 or something around that. Yeah, I know that Zav, that works with River West Radio and the River West Video Stores, has won the race in the time, was unable to get in as a cyclist this year. So it's been hopefully they're drawing in that they just found it necessary to black out at some point.
Such controversy.
Yes. It's a little rough, you know. People wait in line and then they don't get a spot, but that's just the way it goes. We got to keep the streets safe for everybody, so, you know, limiting the number of people that you have, always a good thing. Underwear bike ride coming up in 2 weeks. And, you know, when we have 800 people, it's hard.
So have the underwear bike rides, have they been well attended?
Yes.
Okay. Excellent. But yeah, there you go. I mean, if you can get 700 people to ride around all night long, I'm sure we could make a good support show at least, 40, 50 people more?
I think there's always room for one more.
Oh, excellent.
Just a tip.
Cool.
Working blue today, I see. But what else is planned for the River West 24? Is there any more?
Well, there's going to be checkpoints all the way up until 7 o'clock tonight. And let me see where we're at right now. Is it about noon? 1, 2?
It's 1:15 currently.
Yeah. So a lot of people are doing the COA. Again, these are just things around the neighborhood that, like, they're the bonus checkpoints. So you go do the tour of the COA and they show you what they're all about. And it's very interesting. Next thing they're doing, cooperation triumphs over competition. 829 East Clark.
Let's hope so.
Yes.
At 4 p.m., they stop the Bum Chicka Baba. That should be a fun one.
Sounds like a hot lap.
It's right here on Center, so I know it's going to be fun.
Yeah, I was wondering, do you have a favorite checkpoint, or
It's right here.
yeah, or a particular checkpoint or stage of the race that you liked the most, or?
Last year, I really enjoyed the heroes that were in the, the Milwaukee superheroes that were in the middle of Humboldt Park, and they were fun. You get to meet them, and they were all dressed up in costumes, and you're like, you guys are superheroes. I love it.
It seems to be one of the more popular checkpoint destinations is the haircut. People going to the barbershop. Did you happen to see any of that going on last night? Were there a lot of enthusiastic people getting their haircut?
You can see it going on right now. People still getting their hair cut right now. It's almost like the hidden checkpoint of the tattoo. So when you see somebody that has an RW on their leg or somewhere, you just know they were on this ride, and it's kind of crazy.
How is the tattoo this year?
It's nice. Looks like a little cursive thing going roundabout. Roundabout.
They didn't resurrect the Van Halen looking tattoo.
I enjoyed that one. I'm sorry. I liked it.
Yeah, I told them we need to do like a Motley Crue River West with the dots over all the I's and E's.
That'd be awesome, actually.
Very good.
So how's your day been going?
Not bad. Not nearly as long as yours. Run through
Yeah,
it,
no, I'm
so.
tired. I fell asleep outside of church.
That's where most people fall asleep.
Well, I was like, open the doors, and they're like, you're too early. I'm like, I'm falling asleep. Boom.
Run through, yeah, it's been good. This is the first time actually I've been living in River West, so been more involved with.
Do you like living in River West?
I do, definitely.
Yeah?
Yeah, Run through it.
Where were you before this?
Oakland and Webster, more on the east side.
Oh yeah, the east side.
Bit closer to campus. That's where I moved in initially.
I wish we could just get the whole neighborhood together. That way, I mean, Brady Street Festival is going on right now, and I feel like I need to go down there just to see some bands. There's a camel. Ride a camel. Save a cowboy. Save an Arab. Wait, can I say that?
Okay, any number of run through of it. Well, and if nothing else of it, could continue listening to River West radio coverage as around 4. I believe to the colleague and longtime listener, first-time caller, and John Terry will be doing his music show run through with a lot of bicycling-themed songs.
Yes, Eye of the Tiger. There's also that one, the Darth Vader theme song. You know, doom 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 doom. I was doing that on the kazoo all night. That's why my voice sounds like this. Hi, ladies.
Yeah, but feels like it would do it. Oh, so anything else you want to interested in sharing with the broader audience for River West Radio?
I want to ask Chris. So Chris, you have a car. I know you have a really awesome Jeep that you could, get around the city in. Why do you bike? Why do you choose to bike around Milwaukee instead?
I can't incriminate myself. Answering that question would be, no, it's like, I think it's a lot easier. You save a lot of time sometimes because going from downtown to Bayview, hey, get your exercise in, go eat a nice lunch, come on back, easy. Go up to Port Washington. I don't mean the city of like Sheboygan, I just mean Port Washington, like Whitefish Bay area. You're good to go. Go get some cops. I always feel good. When you're on a bike, it's like pedal when you want to pedal, eat when you want to eat, drink when you want to drink, do any stop you like, and take every path that you can find. And in a Jeep, I really can't do that, and traffic lights are not my thing. So I'd rather be on the trail and just keep on going. Keep on going, don't ever stop. With those songs that you were mentioning, I think Eye of the Tiger is one of my favorites.
I don't know, it was my high school theme song that was played each Friday, so that kind of killed it for me, actually, as a run through, in terms of actual appreciation, but,
It's like that Journey resurgence of like 2 summers ago. Now it's just irritating.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't the Journey, it was the Hall & Oates.
Oh, yeah, the Hall & Oates. That was...
Yeah. There's also that one song that goes, "You're the best around, no one's ever gonna bring you down."
The Rocky, no from the Rocky montage.
Yeah, exactly. But that's Randy Marsh's song, so that's already spoken for.
Yeah, when I ride my bicycle and listen to my iPod, I usually put on some Shirley MacLaine, some easy Ukulele Boys, the Koal Crater Boys.
That'd be an interesting project, is to try and see everybody's playlists. Like, this is what I, ride to work with every day.
That would be pretty cool.
This is good for outside, hanging out.
I know I'm boring you with this talk, but I'm just gonna tell you a little story. I love how the River West 24 gets everybody together, even people that aren't on bikes, okay? Just people that are in the community. They all get together, and they're like, "This is for you. This is for you. I also have this for you. You want water? You want food? You want buttons? I love it. I got buttons."
Put the button in front of the camera visual so that anyone following can see. Yeah. Giant.
It's a trickster. It's a trickster.
Oh, you participated with us last week. Beach Day. We had a beach day. There was about 9 of us that participated,
and then it ended up being like 15.
Yeah. And it was good because we all rode together. We rode up to Atwater Park, which was a wonderful ride. We got to ride through Lake Park, and as a group of bicyclists, it was really nice because we rode 2x2 and people gave us room, and we obeyed all the traffic laws and everything. And it was a really nice, pleasant ride both ways, there and back. I mean, it might be a little bit, it might be a little bit.
That's Evan on the swing bike. That's awesome. Community.
Reminisce or like nostalgic for me to say that we had this like great, pleasant day. We spent the whole day on the beach, and it was really fun that we did it without these cars, and we didn't have any problems with cars. Like for my daily commute, I often have problems with cars, and that's where I'm often just alone. So,
Joe P, you're never alone, buddy.
Well, thank you, Chris.
Yeah, definitely. Another interview. Welcome. This is, welcome again. This Size of Thoughts radio show that we have here, that being part of River West 24 coverage. So at this point, are just talking with various people. Are you involved with River West 24 volunteer or race? Or?
I was a volunteer, and I'm part of the Champagne Diet team.
Good.
Second year team.
Yeah. Good. Nice to meet you. I'm Jacob Glicklick.
Nice to meet you, Bart Priepentrog.
Oh yes.
Just off the course. It's hot out there.
You're getting our athlete post, participation interview.
Right.
Where you're always winded and confused, and I like your haircut though.
Yes,
it's very nice.
It's pretty sweet though.
Oh, that was part of the got from one of the.
It was a bonus
checkpoints.
checkpoint last night. The left side is usable. The rest of it I might have to get rid of, but such is life.
And what team did you say you were with?
Well, the Champagne Diet.
Nice.
We're not in first. So.
No, we know.
Yeah, we've got.
I'll say it. Oh.
I'm in first.
Actually, Poisonous Scorpion Razor Blades maintained there first. Either way, but it becomes I say that less to emphasize them in terms of the first rank, but just to repeat the name, because I find that some of the creativity of that also.
What was the name?
celebrating.
I missed the name.
Poisonous Scorpion Razor Blades ... En Fuego.
Wow, rolls off the tongue.
It does. Not nearly as much as original Serbian Sensation, but there's a couple run through. And so you're also volunteering?
Yeah, I volunteered yesterday with the dinner, which was a great volunteer because everyone thought that I made it, so they just kept giving me compliments, and I took them. But no, a lot of people did a lot of hard work for that dinner yesterday, so that was fun.
Good. And yeah, you've been involved with the Rust 24 stuff in previous years?
Yeah, 2 years ago I had volunteered at a couple checkpoints, and then last year as a first-year team. This year doubling up, using all my skills.
Yeah. And your observations or anything or things that make this race this year different than in the past, or other changes structurally in terms of number of people, in terms of community response, etc.?
In terms of my experience, I think it's a little more smooth because I know what's going on. Last year everything was new. We were still figuring things out, but now we're old pros. Less nervous, just go for it.
The audience wants to know what happened to your hair, Bart.
So checkpoint last night, just past checkpoint number 2, a bonus checkpoint on Burleigh Street, was to sit down and get your hair cut, cutter's choice. So a lot of teams, I actually shouldn't say a lot of teams that I've been talking to did not feel so bold to go as to do that, but I had no problem. So you just sit down, someone took a razor, no questions asked. So the left side I've got some nice vanilla ice steps. And then on the right hand side it's a little more leery, and then in the back there's just 3 large chunks just to top it off, so keeps it professional.
I think it looks nice. And I just want to say, that you've done a pretty good job in this race the last couple of years, But I'm kind of interested, because I know you work out in West Dallas, why you decide, instead of getting a car, or taking the bus, why you bike in Milwaukee and what your experiences biking in Milwaukee are.
Sure. Well, the easy answer is biking makes too much sense. Save money, you're happier, you're healthier. It's all around good. Milwaukee's not extraordinarily large, extraordinarily hilly. I mean, in an urban environment, you just experience life so much better if you're on a bike. All you gotta do is calm down, relax, take in the view, enjoy it. So, as Monica mentioned, I'm a planner for the city of West Dallas. Finished grad school a couple years ago, and at that point I was pretty much a transit person. I've been in Milwaukee think since 2003, 2004. I should know that date a little more clearly, but I'm kind of foggy right now. And I'd never owned a car in Milwaukee just because it doesn't appeal to me to have to park it, pay for it, all that rigmarole, move it when it snows, etc. So I primarily had been a pedestrian, walker, and transit user, and then I got my job out in West Allis, which is a little more of a transit commute. Unfortunately, that's not a easy thing to do in the morning. The transit takes me a little over an hour. Switching to a bike 2 years ago, that's now down to 30 minutes. Take the Hank Aaron Trail. It's largely off-road, flat, beautiful. You know, you bike with deer on many occasion. Winter weather this year was great. I think I only had to really think about it for about 3 or 4 weeks. Otherwise, commuting year-round is not a problem. I don't know, back to the initial answer, it just makes too much sense. I think in terms of biking in Milwaukee, I don't know if you've discussed this or not, but I always think the largest impediment is just getting people on bikes. You know, when I lived here, those years when I was a transit rider, I had a bike in the basement. It wasn't all that great. It wasn't reliable, you know, so I was kind of hesitant to use it. Once you just took the bite and bought a decent bike that actually got you around, it, you know, it was a no-brainer. So I think just giving access to people with bikes, you know, whether it's through a bike share program or just have a second one for your friend, introduce them to it, I say go for it.
Yeah, and yeah, some of the connections and network of that seems interesting. I was talking earlier today about some of the implications of strong bicycling culture or subculture within the city. I guess I'd be curious as well, I mean, if you work as city planning, is there any sort of connections there in terms of involvement with, in terms of this bike race, or if there's, I don't know, common visions of like what city should look like in relation to transit, in relation to biking, in relation to sort of either both design and infrastructure and upkeep that makes it more convenient for bicycling as opposed to congested, pollution-filled,
sure.
Urban environment.
Well, I mean, Milwaukee and West Allis, traditional urban development, you know, small blocks, very compact, dense. You don't have to go very far to get any place. Typically the streets are relatively cozy for bikers, you know, keeping those potholes filled, keeping the glass off the streets, educating both bikers and cars on how to coexist with each other. Just calm down, relax, and let it go is pretty much what it amounts to. I mean, there are mornings when, you know, you get frustrated because you're on your way to work and things don't go your way, but, you know, sometimes you gotta sit back and just educate each other on that. In terms of, you know, a bike culture or things like that, last week in West Allis we had our National Night Out event, which is a big deal in terms of community engagement. So the city had a booth, you know, explaining what we're all working on in terms of making quality of life better, you know, redeveloping blighted areas, things like that. Far and away for the past 4 years, the probably number one or number two question we get is, you know, what are you doing for bike infrastructure? We've had a bike plan drafted for the past 4 years that outlines, you know, where new roads should get bike lanes, where new roads should get sharrows, where new roads should get, you know, bike routes, markings, things like that. Every year we go to that, everyone asks us for an update on what's going on with that, just because it's, you know, it's a fun thing. It's noticeable. I mean, in terms of what a city can do for its people, that is one of the most noticeable things you can do. You know, filling potholes, that helps everyone. Striping a bike lane, incredibly noticeable. Not all that expensive, cost-effective. It shows that you care. You know, people are more excited to invest in a city that is invested in. So in terms of that, the number one thing that we tell people to do is contact your alderpersons. You know, it sounds simple, but this is a democracy. Voting matters. So, you know, biking community has to, you know, say it loud, say it proud. We need more bike infrastructure.
Do you think in your estimation, Bart, in your experience with urban planning, that it's necessary to have bike infrastructure in making a world-class city?
Without a doubt. I'm not sure who would even argue with that. In terms of what an actual city is, I mean, you know, I've never been to, you know, larger sprawling cities, but in terms of like a city that Milwaukee is, biking adds, you know, 3 times probably the investment that you could put into it. Bikers have more money to spend in the local economy. They typically spend things closer to home. You know, I'm not biking out to Waukesha to go to Walmart to buy, you know, a large pack of toilet paper or whatever. I'm, you know, biking over to the store or walking over to the store. I spend my money locally. I have more money to spend because I'm not spending, you know, I think it's the AAA estimates is roughly, you know, $7,000 or $8,000 a year to own and operate a vehicle every year. I mean, that's money in my pocket that I can use to spend out at the local, you know, restaurant, local bar.
Did I say that?
I don't drink
craft beer.
I don't drink that much. I do drink local craft beer, that's for sure. I like Milwaukee Brewing Company's local craft beer. That's good.
Yeah, we always had this. We always had this sign that said you're, you know, so many miles away from the brewery, kind of thing. Like, you know, this beer only traveled this many miles to get to you, versus, you know, coming over an entire ocean in a shipping container. You know, like, what if you're right next to like the Stromium container and all your Heineken now glows in the dark? You know, like.
I think that's a good point that raised. I mean, in terms of basically not just to encourage to more remote travel, but that to make the things that are, you know, 10 minutes bicycling away accessible, to make those kind of both interactions and community and purchasing matter. I mean, I think in some ways I've become, you know, more and more a fan recent years of, in some cases, a return to territoriality, a return to connections and neighborhood and things that matter. I think that potentially one of the ways that we as a culture have become misled is, you know, is some degree of fetishization of both technology and sort of this global connectivity, in terms of which see with in terms of online presence and etc. Or just in terms of a sense of overvaluing the, you know, wide range and the, you know, travel, you know, or access anywhere without actually leaving, in terms of comfort of your home. Well, in practice, that still means quite a deal is not done, you know, if our, you know, locked, you know, inside is going to be the screen of it. So I mean, there's no, you know, similar remedies. I mean, I think that there's certainly, I think, intriguing and encouraging aspects about, you know, a city that's more optimized around the availability of bicycling, and that has, you know, a vibrance of that, both, you know, its individual transit and as, you know, cultural community events. I mean, that's the part where River West 24 becomes, you know, interesting, is that it's the transition into the race. I mean, we have sort of the updates in terms of the, you know, people that sort of go through and like win at the end, but it's not, you know, in any mean sense, you know, like around that or a professional race. It's about the process of doing that and framing it as a community. And actually, in that vein, just wanted to mention that Champagne Diet is at 38 laps. Which is not, yeah. So, but it's not the most laps, but that's 38 more than. But it's 38 more than I've done. That's, yeah. I think pretty impressive run through. But in any case, yeah. Beyond
I blame Sam.
No, but yeah, beyond that, I mean, but the question, yeah, just in terms of what implications are of, you know, bicycling, you know, with other people and in relation to that as part of identity.
I mean, and you mentioned connectivity, like in terms of, you know, neighborhoods and urban space. I mean, just picture driving down a car in a neighborhood, what you connect with. I'm not sure you connect with anything. You are, you know, you're focused solely on your radio or on your steering wheel or what have you. You're on a bike, you are within the environment, you see it, you smell it, you know, you can taste it, you have to look, you know, just for your own safety, for everything else. You're looking around, you see everything, you notice, you know, small things in a storefront like that. When you're driving in a car, you drive through a neighborhood. So if we're talking about, you know, local urban redevelopment, you know, neighborhood development, things like that, there's no reason biking shouldn't be prioritized. I mean, sure, cars have their place. We're probably not, you know, we're not going to redesign our cities anytime soon. It took us 50 years to ruin our cities with cars. It might take us 50 years to fix them, but God help us, we'll try, I guess.
I think that's a great point that we haven't brought up yet. Is you know, we brought up that it's healthy, or it's really good health-wise for people to bike. It's good for making community connections. You know, it's less expensive, but I think that Bart brings up a really good point in that it actually makes more financial sense for a city or for a community to put in bike infrastructure, and that you have created those connections in the community that are a little, you know, people are able to see what's happening. People are able to see local business and sniff out things that they might not have, you know, been introduced to before, which all, you know, creates vibrant communities. You have more people buying things at smaller mom and pop owned places than, again, going out and buying the 12-pack of, you know, toilet paper at Walmart or whatever. So again, like, I think that's something we kind of skirted over, is that it's not only this kind of wishy-washy environmentally sound thing to do, but it actually is quite economically healthy for cities. And I think that's something that, politicians and maybe this grassroots movement of River West 24 and the Bicycle Federation of Wisconsin really needs to point out more to people.
I mean, and in terms of that, I was fortunate enough to study for 2.5 weeks in Copenhagen after graduate school for a class, and I mean, you talk about just second nature over there. It's old, it's young, it's rich, it's poor, it's everyone. That it just makes more sense for them to bike. The government has realized that. They make smart investments in wise infrastructure that says this is how we can best live. It's not necessarily a value judgment thing of we want you to bike, we think it's great or whatever. It's an economic. It makes sense for the economic vibrancy of that place that it happens, and so like I said, it took us 50 years to destroy our cities with cars. It could take us 50 years or longer to bring them back, but the tide will turn. It's too noticeable. It's too obvious not to do that. So patience is a virtue that I often do not have, but be that as it may.
So, can I be so bold as to say that your opinion in city life is that cars are destroying cities?
Cars have definitely destroyed cities. I mean, look at the interstate. The interstate should not have divided and destroyed vibrant neighborhoods back in the 50s and 60s. Cars are here to stay. I'm not ignorant to that. We just need to make sure that our policies don't prioritize a parking space over a human being. For the past 4 years, if not longer, it's been jobs. We should be investing in people. We should have education, things like that. What we're actually investing in is, seemingly large parking lots. I mean, not to go too far on it, but when corporations or whatever invest in any place downtown or the suburbs or what have you, I mean, they build a large portion of their development on parking structures. That's just how it is. Well, if we don't invest in transit, if we don't invest in bikes first to make those two things more viable, of course those corporations or those businesses or whatever are going to come in and demand that because they have seemingly no other option. So the city, state, county, you name it, needs to step up and make wiser investments so that we're not forced to build parking structures with 775 spaces in them.
Yeah, and I think part of that statement isn't going too far for at least this immediate group, and actually might even suggest going even further that as much as to be sort of hopeful about some indications, and that it would be like there to be greater unfolding of kind of activities and shift in communities. I also think that there's some structural force reasons like why even the obvious, the sane, the only ecologically sustainable model that hasn't caught on as much. I mean, this area isn't spiting as much focus of study as much as, I mean, like if Walzer or Rec or Terry were here at this point to further into the study of urban space. But I don't know, a bit of a segment of like Mike Davis, David Harvey, in terms of the way that cities are often constructed a long ways to isolate and separate and impose hierarchies. Racial, certainly, of its individual. I mean, to encourage patterns of consumption that, the model of having people go, I mean, ideally driving in large areas so that they're spending more gas, so that they're not seeing more people or other connections, but they're seeing more billboards. So it's
and they're more isolated. But
going out and then traveling over to then areas where they would sort of consume things for a while, then return to homes. I mean, there's that makes a kind of malicious type of sense in the long run, which and that there's reasons why that is profitable, why that is encouraged and reinforced over a period of time. So I mean, in part, it seems that if that's then the both perceptions and
I think it goes further too into the fact that it seems like some kind of crowd control as well. You have people in a portion of the suburbs that are isolated socially and maybe as far as class from other areas that are differentiated in that respect. Then you have them all herd into a mall, and you know where they are. You know what they're doing. If they're not going to a movie in that same complex, they're shopping in the you know, hundreds of stores in that complex, and I think that scares a lot of you know, people within the city as far as policing and making sure that the community is, you know, quote unquote safe by corralling people into these complexes, and that's also good for big corporations. You would get people in a Walmart in a big gigantic complex, and they're there for hours. You know where they are, and that's good. That's good for the Walmart corporation. You're spending your money there. When you get out of those big corporations and you go into the city, i.e. on your bike, and you're stopping at little, you know, mom and pop stores, you're free. You are liberated on your bike. You can go where you want. You go to different stores, and like I said before, you're free to choose, and I feel more free to find places you've never even gone to before. And in that sense, you're not a part of the great panopticon. You know, people can't, they're not looking at you. They don't know where you are. I mean, aside from some of the, cameras that are, you know, put up throughout the city. Of course, we have those, and they're hard to spot sometimes. But you are literally more liberated on your bike.
Yeah, at Linneman's Poet Night every Monday.
Yeah, and I mean.
Yes.
Yeah, even
Thanks, Bart.
Even the connection within transit, I mean, even more directly the fact that a number of highways are first made to be in proximity to, you know, in terms of
There's no animosity.
urban, in terms of the heavy, in terms of poor, in terms of black youth. That's sort of the expectation that if there's, you know, needs to be a riot, they will rapidly be able to move tanks into control. I mean,
there's the same size, the width of the road is geared more towards military equipment than it is more towards safety or
the interstate
consumer.
system as in Eisenhower to certain point. I mean, there's ways that very directly. I mean, sometimes I think individual. Bart has left us. Thanks very much again for doing this. But yeah, ways that sort of the broader infrastructure of vehicles that people think of as such a individual consumer, or people would say like personal liberation, and through the mechanisms for that are, you know, blatantly framed by both racist thinking and Cold War military preparation. That is sort of the undeniable, overt.
Well, the Italians in World War II, they had a battalion that was equipped with bicycles. They had folding bicycles, so they could ride from,
I have to wrap it up
you know.
in a couple minutes because I'm going to have about 300 people coming through here, and I'm going to need to get in that space.
All right. Well,
Sounds good. 5 minutes?
I'm not sure if you can get out in 30 seconds. By 5 minutes, you may be.
all right. 5 minutes it is. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So what time is it?
1:45. Sounds good.
My day has already been a veritable shitstorm.
Spencer. Anyway, continue. So we were saying, yes, I mean, Brian, you know.
Just a little local flavor with it.
So I mean, it's a matter of, I think, of figuring out where we're at currently at this point of it, and what seems then a matter of finding the individual experiences that are work. I mean, I guess in part you sort of have both processes have been sort of more as the actual sort of bike riders, and other sort of sides of it where it's personally rewarded, and I'm trying to bring it around to anarchism and anti-capitalism and the unsustainable nature of current lifestyle. But I mean,
You just can't help yourself,
no.
Jacob.
But I think that also, I mean, we need those individual experiences. I mean, we need to, as Joe said before, present it that, you know, this isn't just, I mean, partly that it's not just, you know, the crazy dirty hippie that's sort of doing this, but it's also not, you know, just people bicycling as a kind of the serious need to save in terms of the planet. That it's also has to be a fun experience, that both narratives need to get presented so that we don't, I mean, I think we lose something if bicycling becomes just an aesthetic or
purely for pleasure, or purely for community.
or even just like a hobby, like I collect stamps. You know, I look at Swiss watches. You know, I ride bikes instead of doing a car. Or, you know, I'm wacky that way. I mean, I think we do lose something if that is, but we also lose something if we do present it as this serious, necessary mission to hit the planet. What we lose of that one is
The great thing is you can make it what you want it. You know, if you want to be a serious long-distance commuter out on the road in your, gear and your $3,000 bike, you can do that. If you want to be, you know, a person who just simply rides in the city on the paths on the weekends for fun, or if you want to be, you know, the person who commutes all year round in the city, you can be any of those things. The interesting thing is, no matter what camp you come from, you always have something in common with other people. You have that cross divide, you know, with other bikers. You have biking in common. So whatever it is for you that it is, you still belong to that kind of biking community. And I think that's really the interesting and salient point of, you know, this kind of bike revolution that's happening, is that people who normally wouldn't come together and maybe, you know, have a conversation can come together over their experiences, whatever it may be, with the bicycle. And as we heard from Bart, it's not just, you know, it's not just this whimsical hippie movement that to save the earth, but it is actually more financially viable for cities to get better biking infrastructure in place. So.
Yeah, there's a lot less impact on the road, on the environment, on the statuary. You know, all the, you know, chemicals that come out of the back of a tailpipe are pretty caustic, and it reminds me a lot of times that when I'm sitting behind a car at a stoplight or in traffic, and people aren't as necessarily responsible of taking care of their car, it's putting a lot of pollution out in the air, which I'm breathing in directly. You know, I'm still being punished for trying to do the right thing. So it's something that I think a lot of people don't consider the car as something that needs to be maintained as a healthy, you know, piece of machinery. It's just like your bicycle. It's just like your lungs. You know, you need to.
Yeah, we definitely don't do any or have very strict regulations on, you know, car maintenance, where you're supposed to have, you know, your car checked up or have emissions checked each year or whatever. It's certainly living in the city. We notice that there are a lot of cars who slip through the cracks on that. Mm-hmm. You can hear them, you can smell them, you can, you know. But again, like, in just wrapping up, because we only have a few more minutes, I don't want to get down on driving, you know. I'm also, like Bart, not ignorant to the fact that cars are going to be around for a while, and in some instances they're actually really nice to have. But I think we definitely need to take more of a proactive stance on creating bike culture in Milwaukee, and I think it will be just better for Milwaukee to do that. That's my piece.
Agreed.
Yeah, so I think there's some common theme that run through this. I mean, the importance of bicycling as an individual experience, but also that as need for organization in both in framing the best individual experience, but also hopefully in drawing out a kind of identity and expanding this. I mean, I think that there is a inherent politics of this that can perhaps usefully shape and run through. So I guess a matter of both being, I think, unapologetic about this as a alternative. I mean, and also being unapologetic in criticizing a lot of the unexamined norms and assumptions of everything car run through, which, again, it can't be sort of overestimated, is, I think, rooted in, in terms of a very sort of Americanized, very,
5 minutes, right?
yeah, very false fetish that is, unambiguously, objectively unsustainable and erodes
take another 5 to take this stuff down.
We're almost done.
Yeah, 2 more minutes.
Thank you.
So, so with that, I think it becomes the, hopefully something that is commentary of infinite value, but again, as beyond that, all else would encourage you to continue the focus on race. Let's see, is the final check for where we're at. Let's see if hopefully Poisonous, Scorpion, Razor Blades, yes, they are continuing as lead. Now we've done 60 laps, as we have many other for the, again, let's do it, 270 teams that are engaged in this process. River West 24 has been going on for almost 19 hours now, still has a few more hours to go. Again, this has been Size of Thoughts, conversation with a lot of history graduate students. I've been producer Jacob Glicklick, joined by the guests Joe P. and Monica Drake, as well as temporary walk-in guests Chris and Bart. Again, hope that continue to listen to the coverage for this as long as the River West 24 goes on, and also be sure to tune in to hear regular run through this coming Tuesday when I and Beth Robinson will be talking about labor activism in the 1930s as contrasted against contemporary practices. So again, thank you, and
thank you.
Have a good afternoon.
Wait, one more thank you.
Also, just the random people who might be offended. Sure. In addition to the legalities.
And this is stop quickly. Just press the stop. Oh yeah, and then close. I'm sorry.